Hello and welcome to the Wild Questions podcast presented by the RSPB. It's all about asking silly questions and getting serious answers backed by science. I'm your host Yaz and I'm joined by my co-host Jamie. I host the TikTok. I look after all the TikTok stuff at the RSPB.
And I edit the RSPB magazine.
And we have this lovely little podcast that we've been creating for your wonderful ears that you're listening to right now. And across this journey that we've been going on, we've been learning a lot. I think I know way more about birds than I ever thought I knew while working at the RSPB. Well, what about yourself, Jamie?
Yeah, there's been a lot of surprises, and certainly in this episode, there's a fact that you come up with, surprisingly, about whales, which is a slight tangent. But something to listen out for this. Listen out for this.
I always come with the it's never bird facts either, even though I work for a bird charity. I'm like, hey, do you know a fact about sharks? Today's episode is not about the ocean. Today's episode, we are talking to a fantastic photographer, creative, who has worked for us before and is just such a force in the wildlife space. I will let her introduce herself because she is best at it. Take it away.
Hi guys, I'm Mathushaa Sagthidas. I'm a photographer, but also do a bit of set design work as well.
So the questions you asked for this episode, me and Jamie were quite interested in. I wondered, one of the questions, and we'll get into it later in the episode, but one of the questions was about animals having a sense of humour. Where does that come from? Have you seen some funny animals? Is there like an animal that gave you a little giggle, or what? Where? Give me the background on that.
I think it's just more so a lot of the questions that I'll say, I think you'll see, because some of them I'm like looking back, I'm like, oh, I wonder if that's strange to ask. I think it's just more so curiosity, like especially when you like seeing films when you're kids, right? And the way that like, especially when there's an animal involved, and the way that they're animated or whatnot, or like just in certain films, I'm like, will they actually even be like that in real life?
Yeah. No, I mean, there's never any silly questions here. We're the silly nature podcast, so I just found them quite interesting. Kick things off, would you like to ask your first question? And Jamie, the expert, the legend, the RSPB magazine connoisseur, will be able to answer them for you.
So my first question, can owls injure themselves when they twist their necks?
Valid question, because can't they turn their necks like fully all the way around, which is like crazy. Jamie, do they?
I love that a lot of these questions are inspired by things you've seen in film or cartoons or, those kind of animated stories. I'm sure I've seen this done in a cartoon. No, they can't turn their heads all the way around. But luckily they don't injure themselves either when they twist their necks, unless something goes very wrong. So it turns out that we didn't solve the mystery of how owls can turn their heads nearly full circle without hurting themselves until about 2013. And there was a study.
Really?
Yeah, so it's a fairly recent thing. So it's been a mystery for all these years. A university study found a number of adaptations. So they've got 14 vertebrae in their neck compared to our 7. And it always intrigues me that giraffes have the same number of vertebrae in their necks as humans, 7. But owls have double that. Owls have 14 vertebrae. So that allows them a lot more flexibility.
Wow.
Carotid arteries are really close to the center of rotation, so that reduces the twisting and the stretching of those. And they've got vertebral arteries, the ones that travel through channels in the vertebrae. They have more room around them, and they're cushioned with an air sac. So there's all that kind of extra protection built in when the owl's twisting its neck. They've got a ton of small connecting blood vessels, meaning that if flow's cut off in one place, the blood can find a new route. So again, really clever. And we can't not mention the pools of blood, which sounds horrific. But they have a section under their carotids, which they can fill with blood to make sure some is available if the supply gets cut off elsewhere as they're twisting and turning. So that's incredible. All of that is going on in an owl's neck when we see it doing that thing where it's like looking around it. So what an amazing adaptation that is. So yeah, they can't turn them all the way around, but they can turn them quite a way, a lot more than we can.
I just have a question. So you know how you said they've got like a sack of blood that they they have in case it gets cut, like the supply gets cut off? Well, that refills itself.
Yeah, so you imagine they turn they'll turn and it's like, oh, that's a bit cut off there, but there's a little spare bit here. And they'll turn back and it'll refill. I suppose this is the normal setting. This is like normal facing forward. So presumably everything is flowing as it would, but you turn and then they go, oh, I'll just use this little bit here, little bit here. So yeah, incredibly clever. And I should say at this point that we're very grateful, and we always thank them at the end, that we do have a team of experts, don't we? Yes, who back us up on this, who do a lot of the research.
Yes, they do all the heavy lifting and we just are the beautiful faces. And that's quite crazy. I wonder, Jamie, why do they need to turn their necks all the way around? Is it just so they can like...
That's a really good question. I think there's a few things. I think because a lot of these species are operating at night, they need to stay silent because their prey will pick up on any kind of movement. So they need to ideally perch in one spot. And some owls do kind of hover over fields. You see things like short-eared owls hunting at dusk, but a lot of them will perch and just stay in one point and say on a fence post or something. And they are listening. They are listening for those sounds that are happening with voles and mice and shrews moving through the grass below them. And they need to be able to move quietly to start with. So they've got to be able to pinpoint where they're going to go. Before they pounce down, they've got to be absolutely sure that they know which direction the sound is coming from. So they're going to angle their bodies. They're going to look around slowly, angling the ears. So it's the ears as well as the eyes. So the ears need to triangulate exactly where that sound's coming from. So it's the way the whole owl is operating to go, this is where I'm gonna dive down to. This is where I'm gonna jump off this fence post and dive down to the grass. So it's all to do with just really kind of focusing on where the sound's coming from without the bird having to move around a lot.
Wow. I just thought they wanted to give people daggers, so they were just like full 360 range to like
Some of them
give
do look
people
really
the
angry.
death stares.
Have you seen a short-eared owl's face? It's like they're really angry eyes.
I know,
Yeah.
but they're so cute. They're like little dough balls.
I think the facial expressions that they have is very like intense.
If mean, then why in cuddly shape? If mean,
That's quite true. It
then
doesn't.
why fluffy babies? Like they're just babies with fluff, like in my eyes, and that's why I would definitely get whacked by an owl who's like, get out my way. That was really interesting. What was the other question you had?
So my next one is, do worms have eyes?
This is a good question because I think about this all the time. Like, how do they see? Like, do they vibe it out?
Like you can't. I mean, obviously, like they're very small, and you can't really tell if they do have eyes. In my head, I'm like, I'm sure they do. They must do. They can't not have eyes.
But what if they don't have eyes?
Well, it turns out it's complicated. So when we use the term worm, that covers a huge range of different animals, from the earthworms we see in our garden to parasitic tapeworms. And all over the globe, there's different forms of worms that are adapted for different types of habitat, some of which live inside other animals, but we won't dwell on that. So let's stick with the earthworm. Earthworms don't have eyes. So the earthworm you're going to go out and find in a garden, in a park, they don't have eyes. They have photoreceptor cells across their body which can sense whether it's light or dark. And so they can see, I'm for those of you listening, I'm doing inverted commas with my fingers. They can see whether they're underground or not. But some worms do have eyes. So there is a marine worm, Vanadis, bristleworm's eyes are 20 times the weight of the rest of its body. Now, this has obsessed me, this answer. So if we translate that to us, that would mean our eyeballs would weigh about 100 kilograms. And that was the information that our experts gave us. And I went off and thought, well, what can you compare to 100 kilograms? So if we had eyes the same weight as this bristleworm, this marine bristleworm, our eyes would weigh the same as a fridge or a baby elephant.
Whoa!
So like, imagine huge, heavy eyes, you'd be dragging them around.
Oh my
so we
gosh.
could probably do a whole podcast just on eyes and worms, but that's probably all we have to say on the matter for now.
Obviously, when they then come into like not underground, like they're in the light and things like that. But say if there's a person approaching them without realizing or something, how can they sense that?
Well, that's a good question. I suspect because we now know that they can sense light and dark. If your shadow was to fall across them or your foot, they would be very aware that there was darkness, they would move. But now, perhaps having understood that answer, you see a worm on the ground, and often we see them, don't we, as they wriggle across the path after it's rained. They probably have no idea we're there at all, although they probably do sense movement. So, you think you're treading along the path. They probably sense that movement, that vibration. So they probably know you're there if you're moving. But yeah, I would imagine that otherwise a worm doesn't know you're standing looking at it.
That's madness.
That is madness.
I think they must have like really teeny tiny eyes, like of some sort. Like somehow.
Just tiny
It's
little eyes.
it's just sensors.
Teeny
It's just
tiny
a
eyes.
sensor. Yeah.
Tiny little eyes with tiny little eyelashes. I think I need to put an eyelash on a worm now, just to like give it the sense of having eyes. I won't do that because that's not what you should do to wild species. But
We don't encourage that, yes. We don't
we
encourage
don't
worm
encourage
makeovers.
that. But like in my mind, I'm like, I should just give it a nice little set of lashes. Your next question.
Is can wildlife catch the common cold? If so, what are the effects for them compared to humans?
I'm just imagining like otters, like with a little tissue box, and they're like
Oh,
sniffling their nose. Oh my gosh, this is making me sad. Jamie, tell me this isn't true.
can they like handle that?
Well, this is the thing. So we're not specialists in human biology, so we won't get too technical on this. And the common cold isn't just one virus; it's a term that we use. It covers hundreds of different viruses that affect the upper respiratory tract. What does that mean for animals? Well, some species, especially when we're thinking about mammals like horses, cows, cats, they have their own colds with similar symptoms to ours, caused by their own viruses, which have adapted and evolved with their own species. There was a 2018 study by Scully et al., which does document a lethal outbreak of human rhinovirus C among chimpanzees in Uganda. Something which is unexpected is that the virus was previously considered a uniquely human pathogen. So that's really interesting because we know that there are increased dangers around the globe of us getting closer and moving into animals' habitats and us then picking up the diseases. There's been lots of, we've been through a lot in the last decade or so from those kind of diseases and viruses. But it's obviously working both ways as we interact with, particularly, I suppose, apes. Those animals are most closely related to us. They are in huge danger of picking them up from us. And I know that particularly tourism in parts of Africa, you're encouraged not to get too close to your gorillas, your chimpanzees and things, because they could get quite sick from being too close to us.
Wow, I didn't
Good
even
question.
know that.
It doesn't always work. I mean, if you've got chicken pox, your pet cat isn't going to get chicken pox. But it's the respiratory stuff we're talking about, isn't it? As I said, we're not experts in it, but what we do know is that there are particular risks, especially to, I suppose, the great apes that would be genetically closer to us.
Wow. I always forget that apes are our ancestors. I don't know if this happens to you, but I go down a TikTok rabbit hole. I went down a rabbit hole yesterday of evolution and like the different things that things evolved from. And I didn't realize that whales were used to be like land mammals.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Isn't that incredible? Can you imagine a whale just moving down the street?
It was called the Pachycetus, and that's the original.
What do they look like though? Like,
It looked more like what's it, like an anteater, but with
Mm.
like little paws, and like an anteater and an otter had a baby, and it's four-legged, walks on all fours, brown furry, long nose, swims underwater but lives on land. It was so weird. Like all the other animals were like, let's get out the ocean, let's go on
Yeah.
the land, and the whales were like, see you later, dummies. I'm going in
Yeah.
the water. I don't need to know what an Excel spreadsheet is. Bye, losers. Like, it's so weird to think that like deers and whales started off from the same point.
Yeah.
Deers and
That's-
whales started off from the
wait,
same
they
point.
started off from
Yeah.
the water. What were they?
No, they both started off as mammals. So like they would have been similar mammals on land, but then the whales ones went into the water and the deers stayed on land, and they evolved from there. But I think the reason, I love that I know this just from being on TikTok for too long. The reason that whales evolved to be underwater species is because when Pangea, which was the supercontinent, when all the countries and the land mass was stuck together as one before it broke up into the different continents. When Pangea was together, as it started to break apart, there were these little streams that were going into the mainland water, and the ancestors of whales evolved to be able to hunt and fish in there, and then eventually just stayed there and were like, you know what, this isn't that bad. But I love that I went on that tangent from us being related to apes, and then I went, guys, let me tell you a fun fact about whales. Next question, please.
Yes. Can you get hybrids of different bird species?
Ooh, this is a good question. Like, can like crows and pigeons have a baby?
Mm.
I love this question. I love this question. And we get a lot of emails and calls from our members and supporters about this because particularly when you get things like ducks, which I'll come back to in a minute, and geese in our local RSPB nature reserve or your local park, and someone will say, I can't quite make out what this one is. And inevitably, the usual situation is it is a mallard duck, which is hybridized with a domestic duck, a farmyard duck, and this is the result. So you often will get that. So yeah, the answer is yes. Hybridization occurs all the time across a range of species, and birds are no exception. So according to Ottenberg et al.'s 2015 paper in IBIS, 16.4% of bird species have been documented to have hybridized with at least one other species. And that goes up to over 21% if you include birds in captivity. So some of the species that we know to have hybridized with a relatively large number of other species include mallard duck, which I just mentioned, and that's been known to hybridize with 39 species.
Jesus, mallard
I know
ducks are
that's
getting
a
it. They're
lot.
busy.
They
Mallard
are.
duck world domination for 2026. I'm here for it.
Pheasant 12 and herring gull 11. So, I find gulls quite difficult to tell apart sometimes. Herring gulls don't make it easy. So, it's a very timely question because there's a paper that's published just this month by Brian R. Stokes and Timothy H. Kite, which specifically documents, I'm assuming this is in the Americas, a grue jay, which is the offspring of a male blue jay and a female green jay. It's a significant event, as according to the authors, it's the first observed vertebrate that's hybridized as a result of two species expanding their ranges due to, at least in part, to climate change.
Wow.
So if that's correct, that means that we're going to see more of this. We're going to see more of this hybridization as birds and animals move. They shift their ranges. So that could get really interesting, couldn't it?
We're
Yeah.
gonna see the doodleification of birds. You know how like every dog now is a something doodle, like
Yeah.
a labradoodle,
Yeah. This is what I think. This is
doodle.
what I was thinking because I'm like, you get that a lot with dogs.
So it's always doodles as well, and I get it because they're like hypoallergenic, but like I can't see another doodle hybrid. Mostly, I get creeped out by doodles because they look like they're people wearing dog costumes, and I'm like, where's the zipper? Stand up on your two legs, you human, in a dog costume.
There are risks to this as well, if you think about it, because those birds that are changing and expanding their range, they are going to meet up with birds who are endangered. So there's plenty of examples now of that hybridization causing, pretty big problems. Scottish wildcat, I know I'm straying away from birds now, but Scottish wildcat, obviously, we're losing a lot of those because of feral cats interbreeding with them. So you're losing actually, a species. So there are going to be risks with this.
That's quite wild to me, literally wild. But that's like, I, I really wanted to see like a peacock and a flamingo,
Oh, that'll be interesting.
right? Like, what would that look like?
Colourful.
I would hope so. Or would it like cancel it out? Both too colourful.
Would it look like a peacock with a shape and like a flamingo? Really
The ones that shouldn't go together, like like a Chihuahua and a Rottweiler. I feel like a Chihuahua and a Rottweiler. I think maybe like a red kite and a blue tit. That would be something I would. But we won't do that because that feels a bit like we're messing with nature.
Yeah,
So
maybe.
we won't be doing that. But if they do that on their own
I
backs,
think that's their
then I
business.
can only support it. What is your next question?
So my next question is, do crows really like shiny items? If so, why?
Jamie, are you ready to dispel the rumors?
Well, this is a funny one because I've always believed this as well. There's a great. I think growing up there was one of the Tintin books. There was a whole story that was based on a magpie stealing the jewelry of one of the characters. So crows and their corvid cousins, magpies and jays, are often associated with shiny objects. And yeah, like all of us, the idea is embedded into our psyche. But does the science actually bear it out? And apparently not. So there was a study in 2015 from Shepherd et al. At University of Exeter, which looks at magpies. So they exposed these magpies to piles of shiny and non-shiny items, and the magpies weren't attracted to either of them. So in 64 tests, only two shiny objects were picked up, and they were both instantly discarded. So if anything, the birds seem to avoid the piles, showing signs of neophobia, the fear of new things. Now I think that's relevant here because you've basically taken some birds and just stuck some new stuff in front of them. And I know from my experience that trying to attract birds to my garden with bird feeding and other things, the birds don't adapt straight away. They do have a nervousness, a wariness. They want to work out of it safe. So whether that proves that, I'm not sure, but there are lots of anecdotal examples, aren't there? We may even have seen some ourselves.
I think from what you're saying, it sounds like it's not really true, but it's interesting though. What I'm now wondering is where did that idea even come from in the first place?
I think they do take things to put in their nest. Whether the attraction is because it's shiny, I'm not sure.
Okay.
But then when you think about something like bowerbirds, so bowerbirds, which we don't get in the UK, I've seen bowerbird nest in Australia. They do gather things, and they'll gather little objects to make their nest area more attractive to a mate. So there might be a sense of that, like look what I'm capable of going off and collecting things and bringing them back to the nest. Imagine that I could do this with some food for a chick. So maybe there's an element of that. I'm purely speculating here, but.
So it's an element of actually just taking like random objects, but it's not. It doesn't really matter whether it's shiny or not.
It could be that. It could be that. But the conclusion that our expert team came to was maybe crows and magpies just don't want scientists to know the truth. Which I love that. They're so intelligent. They're like, we're not gonna reveal this. She'll remain a secret from you humans.
I feel like, do you know, I feel like crows and ravens, and all of the corvids actually get such a bad rap for stealing, but I've seen other birds steal. I've seen other birds steal from other birds. Like it's not just corvids.
Kleptoparasitism. So you're quite right, and gulls do that, don't they? We've seen gulls
Yeah.
doing that, and
Yeah.
yeah,
They are not afraid to take from humans. Oh,
No.
they are not.
especially when you have food. Oh my God.
Yeah. Yeah. The food belongs to the gulls. Before I eat, I have to consider that.
I should mention, red kites as well, because red kites are known for doing that. So,
Yeah.
historically, people would find like, underwear snatched from washing lines, like being used to line the nest. So, red kites are also quite bold and like they'll come down and make some deliberate choices as to what they want to take away.
Corvids get all the bad rap, but it's not just them.
No,
All of
exactly.
the birds, all of the birds. This is good. Honestly, I've loved doing this series so far because I'm finding out so much that I didn't even know, and I work for a bird charity. What is your next question? We're on question 6.
So, do animals have a sense of humor?
This is a good question because I feel like birds play with each other too much to not have a sense of humor. Like I've seen birds clown each other. I've seen birds fist fight each other. Like they have to have some sense of humor.
Yeah, they must have. Because in my like, I asked the question, but I'm like, in my head, I'm thinking, I'm sure they must have like a range of emotions.
I feel like I see robins scream a
That
lot.
was so.
Yeah, I feel like I see robins scream at other robins a lot, so they have to have some kind of range of emotions. Jamie, do they?
Oh, I want to believe it. I want to believe it. So whether it could be described as a sense of humor, a few species do show behavior that's similar to human laughter and even playfully tease one another. So we're going to immediately go to the great apes because they are the most like us. Chimpanzees, gorillas, bonobos, and orangutans will laugh when they're tickled. Which I love that. I mean, I'm not going to try and tickle one, but having talked about, we don't want to pass on common cold to them. And they're notorious teasers as well. I should mention at this point that the late great Dr. Jane Goodall observed over many, many years things that influence what we know now about the great apes. Her work was amazing and absolutely pioneering in that. There's been other work too. So Laumer et al.'s 2024 paper documents them engaging in poking, body slamming. Oh, I love this hindering movement. It's like blocking each other and other teasing behaviors. So, that I think that probably does exist among the great apes. But let's talk about laughing. So if we consider vocalizations during players' laughter, we could also include rats, dogs, dolphins, and foxes.
Oh,
And let's go into the realm of birds, Kia parrots and penguins.
oh.
Kind of makes sense. But I think that's just me thinking of happy feet.
Yeah, yeah. But it's hard, isn't it? Because what is play? And so if you put your scientist head on and you looked at animals playing, particularly young animals, the interpretation is always, oh well, that they're picking up skills, aren't they? They're picking up skills that they're going to need in life. So when you see small mammal cubs crawling over each other and play fighting, those are developing the skills. I don't know. I want to believe there's laughter there somewhere. And I know, for me, definitely the great apes. Parrots and penguins, I can see it. You can picture it, can't you?
So strange reference, but in Fantastic Mr. Fox, various different species of animals get along so well. Is that reality?
I hope so. I hope they all live together in like one big happy family, but I know that's not true. I know that's not true.
Some
But
of the
like,
animals that the Mr. Fox character gets along with, I'm like, wouldn't you eat them in reality? Like it sounds mean, but do you know what I mean? Or I'm like, am I wrong?
Jamie, crush my dreams
So,
and my spirits and tell us the truth.
I think there is an element of truth here. So I would say that, I mean, there are lots of, like, particularly children's adaptations of stories that show that. I mean, I was going to mention Animals of Farthing Wood and the lesser known Battle for Badger's Wood, which is a favourite of mine. But then lots of modern day cartoons and films and things have this in. So it does exist. It's called interspecies friendship, and us and our pets are an obvious example. But there
Oh,
so yes, yeah, this is the thing. There's endless examples of this happening between non-humans out in the wild. So as an example that I've seen with my own eyes at RSPB HQ in the lodge in Bedfordshire, you do get mixed flocks of birds. So on the fields opposite the lodge, you get mixed flocks in winter of buntings, yellowhammers, skylarks, either sparrows going down and feeding on the seed. I've seen moving through the trees at the lodge. Blue tit, great tit, tree creeper even mixed in with them, nuthatch, just sticking together through the winter because they can move through the trees safely together, safety in numbers. So it does happen. So there are some other examples. So there's a book called Unlikely Friendships, Dogs, which documents dogs making friends with species, including a pygmy owl, cute, a deer, a horse, and a meerkat. And I'm sure they would have made friends with a whale if it lived on land as well. There's another book, American Bison, A Natural History, details how the ecologist Steve Minter observed badgers and coyotes working together to hunt squirrels. So that's a team up that's been long talked about in Native American lore. In 2016, there was a marine research group which filmed a young narwhal swimming and playing with a group of beluga whales, spotted again over several years after that. You've got birds like red-billed oxpeckers, which regularly sit on various species, including impalas, giraffes, hippos, to eat the ticks off them. Cattle egrets, I should mention as well, which we now have in the UK. So the bird benefits from the food, the animal, it's the large mammal it's sitting on, benefits from having the ticks taken away. So there's lots of examples of that. I think it's wonderful. Yeah, it's lovely to see.
that's really wholesome. I like the example of our pets because, yeah, that should feel obvious that obviously, like, we're a species.
That one should have probably been a bit more. That should be a bit more obvious. But I think it's just what I was thinking. It's more like animals getting along with each other in that sense.
But then we're animals getting along with dogs and cats, and we get along with like mice and rats and stuff. Well, not all of us, but like I know if I see
Yeah.
a rogue wild animal, like if I see a hedgehog, I'll let it go on its merry way instead of, I don't know, killing it like a wild animal. I'm like, bye, Mr. Hedgehog. But yeah, I feel like that's probably the most obvious example. But we're the sentient beings of the animal world, whereas I guess it's different for the other animals. But it's good that they somewhat get along. Your last question, I think, is a really interesting one. So it's, is silence ever truly natural in the wild? What brought you to that question?
I think when I was younger, I used to do more so when I was younger. I used to do a lot of like walks and hikes and things like that, either with school trips, either with a friend, that kind of thing. Um, and it wasn't, I would think like, even if it was a moment in time between us, for example, I was just thinking, I don't think it was ever truly, truly silent, but I'm like, can it ever be? Like, plus if I'm doing a walk by myself, I live in like near like the suburbs and things like that. So when you walk through certain areas, I'm just thinking, oh, it doesn't really sound completely quiet.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, take me up there, but when I say that, though, because obviously when you're walking, you're creating that noise.
Mm.
Take me away. I'm like, is it ever truly just silent there?
This all depends whether we're talking about human generated sounds or natural sounds. I think for it to be truly silent, you would need no wind, no animals, no rain, nothing. So, two things that make me think about this. So, the time when there was that huge volcanic eruption in Iceland, the name of the volcano I cannot pronounce, but that changed the environment quite a bit for me. I was living quite near Heathrow Airport at the time. So, that was just extraordinary, just coming out and not hearing a plane going over every 1.5 minutes. And then COVID, we've all been through COVID, and how quiet that was as well. That was, traffic went suddenly,
Mm.
humans out on the streets went, and it's very it's unsettling when you're used to it. You might experience that kind of sound now somewhere incredibly remote like Antarctica or deep in a desert, but even there something would interrupt it before long. So if you don't include the sound of your own breathing and your own heartbeat. For a BBC article, Bernie Krause, who is a bioacoustics and soundscape ecology expert, said there are no places on Earth that I've been that haven't been affected by human sound. So it maybe depends on your definition. How long does a silence need to last before it's a natural silence, and how silent does silence have to be? And the less strict you are, the more silence there is in the world. Really, really interesting. Do you like silence? Is it something that you need?
Oh my God, I'm not a silent type of person. But I think when I thought of that question, I just wondered like if you take all the humans away, what would the world look like? Because obviously when you walk through these environments, you're gonna just create those sounds. But I'm like, what would it be ever truly silent if you take like the humans away from these kind of environments, going through them, things like that?
That's a good one. As well, isn't isn't there animals that can't actually hear sound but only feel vibrations?
Mm.
And technically, not all vibrations make a sound, I think. Well, not to us anyway. So, like, I think it's quite interesting. I don't think nature will ever truly be silent, though. I think there's always going to be a bird or a tree or the sound of wind or something rustling that keeps nature alive. That's the great thing about nature, though. Like, the sounds of it and the sounds of life existing is what makes nature so beautiful.
Yeah.
That's a good summary. And I think the sound of nature is something that we've evolved with. So I think that's why we enjoy hearing birdsong. So, it's been with us for millennia, and that's why it's a lovely thing to hear. And those sounds are somehow ingrained in us, I think, those sounds of nature. I remember a few years ago, as the RSPB, we did a takeover of several places in London playing birdsong. So we played it. I played it on the Underground, on a couple of underground stations, and I played it in a big shopping centre, Westfield Shopping Centre in West London. And people were coming up to us just sort of thanking us for it. Some were slightly unnerved because they thought they got up too early and they got up at dawn and there were birds singing around them. But it genuinely kind of made people's day. It put a spring in their step. Playing at Westminster Tube Station and people coming up the escalator go, wow, what is this? Yeah, there is something I think that we look forward to hearing. And as I was just saying, I think the quietness is unnerving. We're just not used to it, are we? It feels very odd now.
Yeah, no, actually, that's quite true. I would say that part for me is unnerving. When I'm saying walking in these kind of environments by myself, that's when I find it unnerving. That's why I was wondering, is it ever truly silent? Because I'm like, it's not silent, but something about it feels a bit like odd and not so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Doesn't feel natural to us, does it?
Doesn't feel
Yeah.
natural, yeah.
Good question. Thank you.
It's been a pleasure having you on the podcast. Is there anything you'd like to plug? Anywhere that people can find you? Where is the best place that people can follow and support you?
Yeah, sure. Thank you for having me, by the way. And socials, my socials at is like the same across everything. Very happy with that. So it's Mathux Photos, so Mathux Photos. If you do want to see any of my work.
I love that. Amazing. And hire you. Hello. Let's get you doing some more photos for people. Hire her now. That's it. Thank you so much for listening. And we'll see you on the next one.
Amazing. Thank you for having me.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Wild Questions, an RSPB podcast. To find out more about the RSPB, to donate and become a member, or just to follow us online, you can head to our social media at RSPB, or you can head to our website. Thank you so much to our team of specialists, our fact-checking team, and all the scientists we work with every day that make these episodes happen. Thanks to our hosts and our